So we're going to close today with Eric Asbeck, who is uh, somebody who I've been talking to. Has it been like about a year now, Eric? And
It's
his,
been a while.
yeah, his way of helping us um, get the thing we want done, so that we have room in our life for the other things that also matters for us, has been terrific reinforcement. It's something I have chatted with other folks about, and potentially some future connections for you there also. But it's seems to be an almost universal situation that we find ourselves in. And that's one of several reasons that I made the request, and I have the honor of having Eric join us on this summit. And for any of you who have been standing up and want to sit back down, this is your cue. um, so, hi, Eric. Thank you so much for joining us. And
Always good to get out of your chair.
yes. Yeah. So could you tell us a little bit more about what you do and what you help us do?
Sure. My computer is doing slow things, so bear with me.
Yeah,
So,
it feels like there's a little bit of lag at moments.
yeah, my that's been happening to me all day, and I'm not sure what's going on. So, the wonders of tech.
Yes. Thank goodness we have it. And
So, I'm just going to here. Let's see if I can do that. So this is throwing me off a little bit, but that's all right. So um, you know, I've wanted to be an entrepreneur since my dad was when I was a kid, my dad was a successful research chemist, but he also had this immigrant entrepreneur dream, and he spent time from when I was in fourth grade until high school um, inventing, designing, patenting, and building a prototype of an amphibious motorhome. 29 feet long, drive it in the water, and it's a boat. And we've got the pictures to prove it. Uh, it and things were, he was ready to launch the business in the early 70s, and a series, each time he got ready to launch, one of the gas crises hit. Remember those long lines? Uh,
yeah.
yeah. And so he basically he kept backing off, and eventually he never did start that business. He retired early and went into business with my uncle, and that he and mom were comfortable for the rest of their lives, but he just never realized his dream. But that stuck with me, the idea of having your own business and what you could create with something like that. So I ended up following a more conventional path, and got engineering degrees and MBA, all that kind of stuff, and worked in corporate. But I always worked in areas where I was developing new products and services for the companies I worked with. And kind of, it was always golden handcuffs, uh, it was just a little too lucrative to say, okay, fine, I'll make the jump. But along the way, I had a couple other things happen. Unwanted, so I had a couple sons along the way, got married, and then ended up with an unwanted divorce. Uh, and then the part that we connect with here is all of a sudden one day I couldn't get out of bed, and I had a tumor in my spine. Turns out I was misdiagnosed with fractured ribs, but I have multiple myeloma, which is treatable, not curable, and I've been living with it for the last 17 years. Um, and it's one of those things where you just have to, pardon me for 1 second. I know what's going on. I had taken my PC out to the lanai, And when I came back, I didn't plug it back in. So it's operating on battery. So I'm going to just disappear for a second and plug it in. I'll be right back.
Okay. We all need our various versions of plugging in, um, whether sometimes it's the power, sometimes it's the internet access. Um,
There we go.
and
Hopefully that will make a difference.
yeah, yeah.
Um, it already seems like it has. So
Oh,
anyway,
good,
uh,
good.
you know, to make a long story short, I had to do all kinds of stuff. I was on disability for 6 months. I had back surgery and IVs, all that, back brace to help me stand, and all these sort of things. And I've basically been on treatment ever since. But in the middle of that, I had the opportunity. Well, I got reorganized out of my job because I was one of
Mm.
the, how they call the herd. Well, I was, you know, I was culled right around 2008 when the market crashed. But uh, I I finally decided to make the jump into my own business. Actually, I lost a good friend of mine, and there's a whole story with that. But um, it, I was like, "What the heck am I doing with my life?" You always wanted to do this, so I jumped in. And I started helping people, entrepreneurs who wanted to start a business, figure out a business that they love to do, that they could deliver with confidence. And um, I ended up actually helping. They expanded that to other entrepreneurs who were um, successful but miserable because there's something was missing, and I could bring that
Mhm.
same thing to bear there, and that was really great. I ended up retiring. What I I realized I could retire through a set of things, and so I did. But then I failed retirement because I kept finding entrepreneur friends who were trying to figure out if they could ever stop working. So I was like, well, here's what I did, and one thing and another, and it's led to now I uh, teach entrepreneurs how to stay super focused on their number one goal, because that was the sort of theme all the way from way back when I was uh, pivoting through corporate life, trying to find ways to be an entrepreneur, all the way through, through now. So uh, I, so with that said, um, my focus is helping entrepreneurs have a great life by making their number one goal for business happen. And I have a whole process for that. Uh, I I'll say it. I've had to deal with focus challenges with all the stuff that's kind of been thrown along the way. And if you ever have been on chemo, you know that you get a hit periodically. And I was on one thing once a week that disrupted my sleep. And fortunately, I was able to do pill-based things for a while, but then it moved to IV-based things, and those hit harder and so forth. Um, but I've been really lucky um, because there's a new treatment modality for multiple myeloma called CAR T cell therapy, and they take your T cells, your lymphocytes, and train them to go kill the myeloma cells, and so they grow 1 billion of them, and then they're infuse them into. There's a big war, and hopefully it kills everything off. And I had that procedure in April, and I had to stop chemo a couple months before, so I haven't been on treatment since February, and that is really great. Now, it wiped out my vaccines and immunities. Deal with all that, but quality of life is so much better, and um, it's, it everything else is small potatoes. There's that kind of uh, joke. There's like, what are the two rules of life? And the first one is don't sweat the small stuff, and the second
Mm.
was it's all small stuff. And that's I've I've been like a pebble in the stream and had a lot of edges. I don't get upset by a lot of different things. It just
Yes, yes. Yeah, exactly. You learn to let it just flow past smoothly.
yeah. So I hope that I mean, I kind of wandered through that story. I hope it was helpful to your listeners.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it gives us some things to relate to, and some things to think about, but also it sort of gives me the idea that you've had a chance to really practice this this approach that you have of focusing on the most important thing,
Yeah.
um, and as being a way to kind of get to your goals.
Yes.
Um, I can guess that multitasking is not your favorite. Um,
Uh,
can you
I
sort of
say that's an
contrast?
illusion. I say I mean so interestingly enough, um, I when when I started teaching about staying focused on your number one goal, um, I use peer-reviewed, uh, well-accepted neuroscience principles as the organizing structure underlying it. And one of the things that I've come to learn is that staying focused intently on something and not being distracted is an illusion, because your brain is designed with two different parts. One is the kind of executive functions, which are like the adult in the room, but then there's the limbic system, which is designed to alert whenever anything is going on around you. You know, it's like that primitive "watch out, there's a bear coming" or something like that. And it's always operating to some degree or another. And there's this balance that you strike between being attentive and having your attention pulled away. And so you there's ways you can train your brain to do that through like meditation and things like uh, mindfulness meditation, other practices like that. But the bottom
Mhm.
line is that uh, staying focused is always a challenge of being able to refocus as opposed to just being that way. And so the mindful meditation trains you on the ability to refocus. And so that's one of the things that's underlying my system, which is you get really clear about what's most important. And there's like the vision stage, which really talks about not just your business, but your whole life, because especially entrepreneurs, you can't separate those things out. It's all intertwined. Even if you're working in a, you know, kind of a conventional employee-based job, but it's a little easier to kind of partition there. But especially as an entrepreneur, it's all wrapped up together. But having a vision is a beautiful thing, and it's great to, and you want to have a vivid idea of what that is. But the second step is to identify some particular number one goal that is going to carry you through to the next 2 or 3 years. Where do you want to, you know, what do you want things to be then? And once you have that anchor point, you can look at what milestones will take you along the way. And then really it comes down to planning on a weekly basis and a daily basis. You know, is this thing that I'm working on right now moving me toward that goal that I set out there a couple of years ahead, or isn't it? And so there's a whole set of practices about that. You know, you want to know what those stepping stones are. You can move from one to the next, but really, you know, what gets on your calendar day by day, hour by hour, and you know what tasks have you assigned, said you're going to accomplish, what meetings are you going to have, you know, and you can systematically take a look at those things and say, is this moving me in that direction or not? Now that doesn't mean you have to have your calendar packed wall to wall with things. You need breathing room, and sometimes you just have to have time to just say, you know, forget it, I know this isn't in focus, but I'm doing this right now. And also,
Yeah.
you know, blocking out time for play and exercise and eating well and having time with friends and family, and, you know, all the things that make life worthwhile. So um, it's all kind of wrapped up together, but it comes down to, again, just being able to focus or refocus on the stuff that's important, and just ask yourself, is this leading me toward where I really want to go? Because even if you're kind of doing a little kind of wandering, if you're sort of tethered with that vision of the future and that more tangible goal, you can keep creating the life that you want. So
Yeah.
that's kind of in a nutshell how I've come to find my way.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. In terms of your mentioning the skill of refocusing,
Yes.
you know, yes, there are distractions, and yes, there's the need to, allocate time for things like eating and sleeping and
Yeah. And
and
don't forget
you know,
to have some water. Don't forget to
yeah.
breathe.
Oh yes.
I mean, honestly, sometimes if you're anxious, you get tensed up and you're like
Uh-huh.
your breath gets shallow, um, and then you get more anxious. And sometimes you just haven't hydrated. And so it's like what's really underlying is that you're thirsty, but you're like, why am I not able to focus? What's going on? I'm going to push for harder. It's like, no,
Mhm.
take a moment.
Right. Yeah.
And food and getting
Yeah.
enough sleep. You know how horrible it is to try to deal with things if you had enough sleep, haven't had enough sleep in a night.
Do yes. It's
And
not
so
good.
it, it's like you can't just say, well, I'm going to go for several days with like just this like tiny bit of sleep and then I'll catch up. It doesn't work that way. You kind of never recover. So, that's a sleep and eating well so that you fuel your bio neurological self so that it's operating to the best effect so that you have a better chance of
Mhm.
doing what you want and being who you intend to be, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Exactly. So, I guess I would try to summarize that a little bit, or summarize with the one piece of it, as if you have uh, the right goal, which has to be designed thoughtfully, but that it's something that you can help kind of organize the other parts of life around,
Mhm.
and maybe even short-term projects that step along the process
Yeah,
to
actually
get
that's
you
the key thing,
where
like
you're
do
going.
one of those things at a time. Oh, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry to interrupt you. You were on the roll. Go for it. Going.
Well, it sounds like I'm more or less understanding you correctly.
Yes. The one thing that I would tweak,
Mhm.
um, and it's just such a natural thing for people to phrase it this way, is the right goal. Um, we're all making it up.
Uh-huh.
And so whatever that goal is that you've set for yourself, you made it up based on your best information. And you say, I'm going there. And then as you move along, you learn more. And so it's perfectly okay to say, that was my good enough long-term goal, and I'm heading in that direction. Now I'm learning more. And it's like, I'm going to tweak and tune it. Or, sometimes you just are like, I'm tearing it up and we're
Mhm.
doing something else. Um, or, when I was diagnosed, when I had when I got first diagnosed with the myeloma, uh, things were clicking along. I was divorced, but I was doing work I loved, and I was starting to get my feet back on the ground. I was dating somebody I really liked, and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, boom, and life took a sharp left turn, and uh, all the rest of that stuff went out the window. Now, it doesn't have to be that dramatic, but you just sometimes you have to just tear things up and like, what is it now?
Yeah.
So that's just uh, everything you said was right on target. I just want to ensure people that it's like there's not some right perfect goal for you. You make up a goal that moves you toward what you have determined is most important to you. And that bigger, longer term vision, the clearer you are about it, the better, the more kind of tangible, the more you can taste it and feel it and see it. That's
Huh?
great. And then the idea of creating that 2 to 3 year goal out, that's like your number one guiding goal that everything else gets organized around, is in support of moving in that direction. But it's just your best guess. So, I mean, you could
Yes.
get crazy trying to figure out what the perfect right goal is and then
Yeah,
not
well, the
doing
future's
anything.
unknowable, right? And it's going to bring new information and changing circumstances. And
Yeah,
yeah, we just pick up skills along the way to try to be able to adjust and deal with things as we get to them.
right. There's that old joke that life is what happens while you're making plans.
Yes.
And I have a refrigerator magnet that says "We plan, God laughs." Um, I, all respect to whatever your faith is, but it's just like uh, stuff happens.
Exactly.
So take action.
Exactly.
Like, do stop working at 5:30 and go spend some time scratching your dog, hanging around with your loved ones, having a nice meal, go for a walk. Because guess what? If you don't do that, then tomorrow you wouldn't have had that done.
Right.
And if you do that day after day, it's like, what the heck? What are you working for?
Right.
I don't,
Exactly.
my
Well,
philosophy.
and it all comes back to because when you do take time to eat a good meal and scratch the dog and the other things, um, it's not only do you enjoy that in that moment, not only are you, better fueled for whatever you're going to do the next day, but in the nutrition sense, but I just do a better job
Yeah,
of whatever it is that I do. I can't
yeah,
tell you how many times I've been procrastinating about something that I wanted to get done that I thought was going to take all day.
yeah.
And when I took the pressure off and said, okay, you know what? I need to go to the grocery store first because I'm just like worried about what I'm going to have for lunch.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, totally.
then, I do that. I come back and the darn thing takes an hour or an hour
Yeah,
and a
you just
quarter.
knock it out. And you're like, why was I wasting all that time worrying? But we
Yes,
do that. That's a human thing.
it
And it's
is.
back to that sort of idea of being able to refocus. It's sort of like that's what you just described is a way for you to just say, you know what, I'm going to give my mind something else to do for a little while here. And in the meantime, I don't know what it is, but somehow in the back of your brain, things get sort of massaged or something, and you come back and you're like, oh, boom, why, what the
Yeah.
heck?
By having that priority and, a system to work towards it, like you
Yeah,
help with.
yeah.
Um, so I wonder if you might have a story or two, whether it's from yourself or from a client,
Mhm.
of how it's different when you're working towards a single goal versus being scattered.
Yes. Well, one story I tell, and it's sort of a parable almost. when I was a kid, I grew up in West Virginia, and we used to run the hills and build forts, and there was dams on the creek and all that kind of stuff, and you had to cross this creek, and it was too wide to jump, and we didn't want to get our shoes wet, so you'd go up to the edge and you start wandering. You'd pick a direction, and you'd start wandering until you found a spot where you looked like, oh, there's the rocks that carry me across, but then you wouldn't just run across, because a rock could be slippery or wobbly, and then you fall in, and that wasn't what you wanted to do. So sometimes you get partway, you take a step, you test a rock, take a step, test a rock, take a step, and sometimes you'd be like, well, I can't, it's not working out, and so you go back and you wander again, pick a direction, and you start wandering again, and then you find another spot, and eventually you end up across. And so the other side of the creek is your goal, and wandering along the edge is your search for the stepping stones to get there. And going back and wandering again is how you deal with obstacles, but it's all around one purpose. And if you tried to do another thing, first of all, like, what other thing could you be doing in that moment? Um, and you can't really be doing more than one thing. I mean, you can pretend that you're trying to do more than one thing, and you could pretend that, if only I could be starting on a rock that was halfway across the creek, but you're not on that rock. You're standing at the edge looking, and there's no rocks to be found, or maybe there is one, but you can't get to it. So you got to start exactly where you are, and there's only, your attention can only be on one thing in a moment, and so all the rest of it is just very sophisticated mind games with yourself, trying to pretend that you're not where you're supposed to be. As a matter of fact, when I after I got divorced, I did a bunch of self-development work, and one of the things that I realized is that how I was behaving is, this isn't the place I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be over there, and like in an argument with reality, and behaving like things were over there. And once I got that clear, I was able to do essentially a kind of a breathing meditation practice, being present to your breath. But instead of being present to my breath, I was present to every moment, just like, here's where I am, here's where I am. And guess what happened? All of a sudden, all these opportunities started to show up. They were there all along, but I didn't see them because I was resisting just accepting, here's where I'm starting. What can I do now? And so if you're ever stuck, just pause, take a step back, assess exactly where you are and exactly where you're not. Like, what's going on and what is really not going on that I'm kind of making up about it. And from there, once you're clear, you can say, okay, what step that can I take from here that's going to move me in a direction of that, what I really want, like what's most important. And sometimes, like, especially if you're feeling like overwhelmed and stuff like that, it's like, just stop and breathe, take a drink of water, go out, take a walk, scratch the dog for a moment, and then like, okay, here's where I am, and move forward. Another anecdote kind of along those lines is when I was first diagnosed, I was on bed rest, and they had, they kept saying, if you have tingling in your, numbness or tingling in your legs, call us. And I was in a situation where the EMTs came and put me in one of those like slat kind of carrying things so that my body was stabilized, rushed me down to the hospital to get MRIs and stuff. And they're like, well, you actually have more space in your spinal cavity than you thought. But one time I was down at the doctor's office, and they said, all right, we're going to send you up to this hospital in Rochester, which is a 2-hour drive. And you're going to get an emergency total corpectomy of your ninth thoracic vertebrae. And they put me in an ambulance. Like right then, they put me in an ambulance, and I did the 2-hour ride up to the hospital. So I was going to a hospital I didn't know, with a doctor I didn't know, for a procedure I didn't understand. Like, do they accept my insurance? Or like, is this what, like, all, like, I was all this uncertainty. And then they put me on a cot, one of those wheel kind of cots in the ER area, but it was so crowded that my cot was up right next to the nurse's station, like it was one of those sort of circular desk things. And
Uh-huh.
they would reel me out to, I'd get an X-ray, and then they'd come back and they'd send me out, and I'd get a CT scan, and then I'd come back, and then they'd send me out and I'd get an MRI, and, did all these tests. And then they put me in a room with a bunch of other people, like 20, 30 other people. And it was like one big room with sheets separating each person, and people were moaning and groaning. And it was like in the middle of the night. And the doctor is going to show up at 8 a.m. to do the surgery. And so you can imagine that my mind was going kind of crazy. But I ended up I fortunately had been practiced on, a breathing meditation, just being present with my breath in, breath out. And I did that and was able to realize I'm okay in this moment. Oh, and I'm okay in this moment. Oh, and I'm okay in this moment. You get the idea. And so I wasn't on my top of my game when the doctor came to see me with his residents following him the next morning. But he said, you know what? It's not serious enough that we have to do the emergency surgery. So call my office and schedule a time and we'll plan it. And he sent me home. So my brother came and picked me up, and we drove the 2 hours back. And, I'm like trying to be careful about my back and all that stuff. I had a clamshell brace that let me be upright. Anyway, it was this long thing, but my point is, several things. One is, if you're faced with like an overwhelming situation and you ground yourself in the present moment, you can just let yourself, like, in this moment, things are okay. And like all that rest of that stuff's a borrowed trouble. Um, and, and also that was the one thing to do then. And by the way, one of the things not to be doing was to be terrorized and imagining what's going to become of me, and imagining all these events that are fear, fantasized events appearing real. Just borrowing trouble. So those are a couple of anecdotes. I don't know if they were a little off what you asked, but I mean, that's stuff I've come to learn. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah. I think that's
Maybe take a
the
breath for a
personal
moment.
yes. The personal side of it um really runs things, doesn't it? I mean, we like our businesses, we want to have them. But uh everything we come to learn about the business ends up helping us personally too.
Yeah. Well, they say
Um,
having a business is one of the greatest character building exercises you can ever undertake.
yeah, for
It's the
sure.
stuff. Can I do it? Am I doing the right thing? Am I worthy? Uh, how am I keep getting distracted. I want to do this right now. Um, can I ask somebody for money? What if I make a commitment to somebody and I can't follow through on it? Um, what if I have students and I teach this thing and they hate me? Or like all this stuff, like it just keeps coming up, and you got to deal with it each step of the way. And, sometimes you just have to kind of take that step and test the rock and see if it's stable and take the next step. And sometimes the launch works or the course sulls and you found your way across that particular creek. And
Uh-huh.
sometimes, you kind of, you're going through the thing and it didn't quite turn out the way you planned. And you kind of wander back and you're like, well, great. So I know I want to keep doing this. So what did I learn? How can I get some, like find whatever guidance you can get that makes sense? And how can I do this again? And in time you get like, okay, I can run a course. I'm confident that I can, what I'm teaching students like, and they get the result and it feels good and everybody's happy. Okay, great. Now I'm going to get the word out, on and on it goes. Right. But
Right.
you don't just, so I learned to dance after I got divorced. And uh, I, I say, I didn't have two left feet. I had three left feet. I was so awkward. And it's just trying to get my feet to do the steps. And there's a bunch of different dances, and each of them has their different steps and all that. And I eventually kind of got confident with that, and then started to learn a little bit about each of them. And then it was like, well, you need to know how to lead your partner as a leader. You have, and there's tricks to that. There's like uh, 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 structural techniques that make all the difference. But so I got a teacher and I started learning that stuff. And then uh, I had my second dance teacher. One day we're standing in the room and there's like kids doing something over here and somebody over there, and she said, we're going to do this dance that is like, you go walk, go around the foxtrot, where you're going to go around the edge of the room. But the room
Uh-huh.
was all clogged, and so she's having me like figure out how to navigate around. And
Wow.
so and sometime later I was taking Argentine tango lessons, and the beginning of lessons, and the teacher said that soft, warm, sweet, cuddly thing in front of you, your partner, is not a bumper car. So you got to figure out how that's like forecraft, how you manage around. But the reason I tell you all that is because one of the things I love to do is dance with people that are kind of new,
Uh-huh.
because they have this illusion that they're supposed to be able to walk in, take like one lesson, and be perfect, and no mistakes. Everything's like all that. It's like, just relax, breathe, relax. Actually, if my partner's relaxed, it's easier to lead her, because if you're stiff, it's like you're not fluid. But
Yeah, the signaling doesn't work so well.
right. But there's that whole kind of illusion of being perfect versus you need to learn your way into things.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the whole point of all that. Just give yourself time, keep
Yeah.
showing up, get good teachers, practice,
Yeah.
learn things. You know.
Yeah. And have one thing that you're trying to accomplish,
Yeah. No, I
to
did
go
other
back
things in my
to.
sorry.
Yeah,
I did other things in my life besides dance, but I
sure.
carved out time, one, to go to dances and just kind of go out, they call it go out into the wild, and
Huh.
get good, spend time with my teachers for lessons. And I would do other things with my life outside of that, but those times were allocated. I mean,
Right.
that's what I was doing,
Yeah.
and not other things.
It seems like a really good metaphor for life on several levels. What's the craft of dance, but also how you went about learning it. And and having that, this is the purpose of what I'm doing, and this is what the thing is that I'm doing. um,
Yeah,
when you have that challenge from the teachers who says, okay, navigate me around the room in spite of all the other people standing
exactly.
around.
Exactly. And when I tried
That's
to like go kind of crosswise, she'd go, "What are you doing?" because you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to be, you go, there's go left, go right, go straight, not go catty corner,
Right,
So,
right,
and I paid her a lot for her to give me that kind of a hard time,
right,
and,
exactly.
to get me to a certain level.
Yeah,
I'll also
yeah, you
say
need people to actually give you the real help you need, not just,
exactly.
yeah.
Finding a good coach, finding a good teacher is a really valuable thing. And when you find them,
Mhm.
I mean, for me, when I find somebody like that, I hang on to them.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
But another
Yeah.
thing I wanted to add is I've been dancing for a while now, and once I've got, like, first you learn the steps, then you learn how to lead, then you learn how to go around the floor. And with leading, you have to be able to plan ahead. It's like you have to be thinking, well, what's the next move I'm going to be doing? And what's the next one? And how's that going to affect what's going on the floor? And you learn it, as time goes on. But I reached a point where I started innovating, and I was like, oh, I can go from a cha-cha to a West Coast swing to a hustle and back to a cha, but like in the same dance, just kind of move from one thing to the other. And I
Mhm.
started to kind of come up with a few little, there's one move that I do that everybody does it on the left hand side, and I also did it on the right because I'm a little dyslexic, and so it's like, oh, I can do it that way. And if somebody's not used to that, that throws them. But it's like, yeah, and that look, and from there, look what we can do. Um, but that comes with a lot of time,
Yeah,
and the same with your business. Um,
right.
it's time in the saddle.
Yeah, yeah, and making sure that you refocus and go back to what matters
Mhm.
when life happens and competitors happen and all the different things.
Right.
But
And the don't forget to play part.
yes,
I mean, it should be
yes.
fun. Like, we're having fun. I
Hmm.
mean, it's just really nice to talk. I mean, we love, it's like some, it's like we have to stop, or we've run,
Right, right, right.
I have to get to the next
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
But
yeah. Actually, and
it's
you're right.
fun.
We are getting to the that
Yeah.
point, but but yeah, but it's yeah, having a sense of purpose and that underlying purpose. Um, it's I think I'll let you say what your sense of purpose is, but mine is that when something like cancer comes along and smacks your life,
Right.
that people still have hope and still have a sense of purpose. And the mountain of information that we get about what we should do and how we should do it and all of those things, um, that that we kind of sort all that out and have a starting point and a path to follow, and kind of break up with all of the old assumptions or old resistances of I can't do it that way or I don't want to do it that way. When life gives you a okay, something's really got to change, what do you change to?
Yeah.
You know, once in that moment where you finally have the bravery to say, okay, I'm going to do this thing now. What is it that I'm going to do?
Right.
Um,
First,
it's
dealing with the terror of the diagnosis and
yeah,
all of that, and dealing with your mortality. And there's a whole thing about that I had to do, and so forth. But then doing the drink from the fire hose kind of learning and
mhm,
sorting, and then people coming and having all kinds of helpful suggestions, and sorting through which ones you're going to give more time to than others, and how you can interact with people who are well-meaning, that maybe that's not it's like so it's your business, You can do what you want. You can charge whatever you want. You can teach whatever you can take whatever actions you want, and it's your cancer, and
Mhm.
you can do what you want. Now, I like to go find the best experts I can find and build a team of those and
Mhm.
keep them coordinated because I'm kind of like that style. But but then how it's my cancer. Ultimately, it's my decision about what treatments I take and what actions I take and how I manage my life and all that. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
so there's when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. And
Right.
so what flavor are you going to make? Although I've heard it say that when life gives you lemons, you should go find somebody that life gave them vodka and have a party.
Sure, there you go. Yes. Well,
So
that kind of,
another way to look at it, right? Uh,
yeah, that goes back
so
a little to your idea of going and finding the right experts.
yeah,
And part of what I've always been about, even, in my consulting work before my health ever, uh, you know, tapped me on the shoulder and said, things have got to
we're going to
change.
do this now.
Yeah, yeah, we're going to do this now. Exactly.
Yeah,
Um, just the putting together a system and making sure the pieces actually work together.
right.
It's always been what I've done. So now that I think about it, that's what I'm doing here again, just with, a different set of specifics in mind. So,
And um, you're you're at the point of your dance skill where
mhm,
you know the steps, you know how to lead or follow, you know how to
mhm,
manage the dance floor and interactions and all that sort of stuff. And
mhm.
now you're at the point where you're like, hey, come check this out here. Let's come to this class and learn a little bit. Like you're teaching and guiding, which is
Yeah,
really awesome. I mean, this is a great topic for
thank
anybody
you.
that's dealing with a cancer diagnosis. And certainly, I mean, if you've got a business, it's just you
Yeah,
typically.
yeah,
And one you
yeah,
are the leader, even if you have a team.
right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, somebody still has to be the captain of the ship.
Yeah,
Even if somebody else is the night watchman for
right,
for a
right.
while you go take care of other stuff like sleeping.
You have to have people to furl the sails or
Mhm.
handle the rudder and things like that. But somebody is saying, okay, everybody play nice. You
Yeah.
do, everybody's got their job to do and seeing that it gets done, and this is the direction we're going,
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah, exactly. So with that in mind, when people have a direction they want to go and set out that one thing that sort of represents that, I'd like to bring up Eric's contact information to help us uh, have resources for how to be super focused and
Yeah.
doing the one thing.
Yes.
And Eric gave us a gift also, um, which if we could please share the link. But also, I just wanted to go back and remind folks that if you're not here to see the link in chat, it is on the schedule page, which is also where you'll see the recordings. So definitely encourage you to reach out for the resources that will help you, that feel like they're, um, aligned for what's most important to you right now. And come back tomorrow. We're running over a little bit. I apologize for that. But I think we started about 2 minutes late as well. Sometimes tech does its thing,
Yes.
and there's so much more we can do with it than without it. So we just go with the flow.
Yes. And
uh,
I realized on my end, one of the issues was my laptop wasn't plugged in. So maybe there's a parable about making sure that you got the energy source available and plugged in for yourself.
Mhm. Yes, if you want to get where you're going, you need to take care of the necessities for that.
Yes.
Yeah. So thanks very much, everyone. It's an honor to have Eric. I so appreciate your time and wisdom behind the scenes over the months as well as today. And thank you for sharing your story and helping us um, both get specific about what it is that we're hoping for, and also relate to the fact that just because it's not always a smooth road doesn't mean that the road doesn't get there eventually. So,
Yeah, my grandmother told me one time when I had a rough spot, she said, you pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and get on with your life. And actually,
mhm.
that's words to a song that was when she was younger. Apparently, it was one of the some of the lyrics, but it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes a song works because it's true.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. So
You're
thank you,
such a
everybody,
treat to
so
talk
much.
with, and
Huh?
talking with your audience. I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you. What a blast.